Yeah, that's it. What do you, Jarrod, you want to stand behind you?
Yeah, come. We'll get... Kim, you come over here with me,
Jarrod,
and then the boys can stand in the back.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So we'll, all right. You guys all good? 7, ABC, Gordo. Yep, great. Well, good morning, and Jarrod Bleijie, Deputy Leader of the Opposition. Fantastic to be joined by some of my colleagues in the State Parliament at FarmFest in regional Queensland. And walking around FarmFest today, talking to people from all across Queensland about the issues that are important to people. And one of the biggest issues that we're getting on the ground here is crime. And it's on that note that I want to talk today, and then I'm going to hand over to Kim McCosker from 4 Ingredients, who is a victim herself of car theft. And when we talk about car theft now, it is confirmed by the statistics that Queensland is the car theft capital of Australia. Now that is no record or statistic to be proud of. Queensland, however, is the car theft capital of Australia. More than 55 families a day are impacted by car theft across Queensland. Whether you're here in Toowoomba region, Sunshine Coast, where Kim's based, far north Queensland, Western Queensland, or on the Gold Coast, Brisbane, no matter where you are in Queensland, people know people that have been affected by the youth crime crisis. In 2015-16, the state government changed the laws. They weakened the youth justice laws. And we've been fighting as an opposition for 8 years for stronger laws, consequences for actions, holding young offenders particularly accountable for their offending, and also for better laws and stronger laws in our community. The community has had an absolute gutful. They've had an absolute gutful of not being listened to. And what we're seeing now with the chaos and crisis of the government and bits and pieces of puzzles here with the laws, obviously now with statistics coming out showing that Queensland is the car theft capital of Australia, that is no banner to be proud of, particularly for the state government. In this region alone, over 600 cars are stolen a year. That's over 12 families a week impacted by the youth crime crisis by having their cars stolen. So when we talk about solutions, we talk about things, consequences for actions. The government have got to put laws in place that hold young offenders accountable for their actions. There has to be consequences for actions. You've got to listen to the victims. You've got to put the rights of the victims before the rights of the offenders. We talk about unshackling the judiciary. We talk about getting rid of detention as a last resort. So every young offender that goes to court at the moment, under the current laws in Queensland, the judge or magistrate has to look at everything, anything but detention. So we're saying to the government, unshackle the judiciary. Give the sentencing judge all the powers to look at all the evidence, all the cases, and look at all the sentencing options, including detention. Because at the moment, they have to look at detention as a last resort. And the third thing is gold standard early intervention programs. I've written to the Auditor General about this, asking the Auditor General to complete an audit of across Queensland of the over $1 billion the government are spending on early intervention prevention programs. We want to know what's working, what's not working, where the government are investing their money, and what is the gold standard. Because if there is, through this Auditor General inquiry, programs across Queensland that show they are drastically decreasing youth crime in areas, they're turning young kids' lives around, then that's what government should be investing in. So, just to sum this all up again, we have a youth crime crisis at the moment. We have a state government in constant chaos and crisis. We have a state government not implementing the laws that victims of crime are needing. We've got families living in fear in their communities, wondering if they're going to wake up in the morning and their car's going to be there in their driveway or their garage. We've got tradies wondering whether their ute going to be parked out the front in the morning, whether their tools are going to be stolen. This is the fear that communities are living in at the moment, and it is real. And we need the Palaszczuk government to listen to these victims. I'm going to hand over to Kim McCosker now from 4 Ingredients, and Kim herself, unfortunately, is the statistic in the youth crime crisis. particularly in the car theft, and where we look at the bad statistics now, Kim has experienced that. So I'd like Kim to share her story, and she's happy to take some questions from you. Thanks, Kim.
So, hi everyone. As Jarrod said, my name is Kim McCosker. I'm a resident of the Sunshine Coast, and a little over 18 months ago, August 9th, 2001, we were the victims of a very serious home invasion, where we had 6 youths climb our walls with knives, force their way into the home and then stole 3 cars. This was a devastating event for our family. But less than 4 nights later, we all saw the, Toto Kefe and his family, victims of a similar home invasion, where 4 of his family were actually injured. So, we realised that although we were the victims of a serious home invasion, we were very lucky that the perpetrators who entered our house with weapons, we didn't wake up, we didn't encounter them. And we knew within 3 hours, and this is the sad thing, and I think this is what we, the public, are getting really frustrated about. We knew within 3 hours of our home invasion who 3 of the 6 perpetrators, offenders were. We knew that they had, multiple offences. They had done this regularly. This was a practice. They didn't steal cars to break them down and sell them. They stole them for joyrides and for notoriety online. We knew that they were arrested. We knew that they were released, and we knew this is all within the span of 4 or 5 days, that 5 days later they were back out in a beautiful home in Hamilton stealing another person's car. And this is just not right. And when you mention consequences for actions, I just believe the current juvenile youth system of Queensland is broken and it is not working. And I just feel that, the perpetrators of these crimes have more rights than the victims. So I will stand by anyone who can affect change sooner rather than later, because I won't stand by and wait for another person to be seriously injured or, worse still, attacked or killed, due to people who are repeat offenders and are doing these because they can, because it's fun, because they get more followers on social media. I just think the system at the moment is broken. And we are calling out for consequences, and we will stand by anybody that can help us achieve that.
So, Kim, can I just ask, when all of that happened, and you said you were online finding out yourself who was involved, but in the moment when they were in your house, it's called a home invasion for a reason, they were invading.
They were.
How did that, in that moment, how did you feel?
So in the moment of the invasion, that sort of immediate 24 hours, we were just devastated, because it's a roll-on effect. They've broken into your house, they've stolen bags. You realise all the other things that have gone as well. The obvious thing are the 3 cars. And I drive a car emblazoned with my brand, 4 ingredients, the easiest cookbooks ever. Like, how far did they really think they were going to get? It was going to stand out. They were standing out. But that's not why they do it. It was a real awakening for us as to why they were doing this. So it's just notoriety. It's just because they can, because it's fun, because there are no consequences. And I just don't understand how 20, 30 years ago, this wasn't the case. This didn't happen. And I think we're all asking, where did we all go so wrong? Why is it so easy now? What can we do, to make our homes the safe castles they should be? So, if there's anyone out there today, lock up, be vigilant, take care, because, I know one of the guys that broke into our house, he had over 30 offences for similar things the day he broke into our house. 30 offences for break and enters, armed robbery, and I just think that's something is really broken. Something needs to be done before someone else is seriously hurt.
Is that the first offence that had been done against you, or have there been other things as well?
We'd had a break-in many, many years earlier, but it was sort of more outside, things on the street. So I think it's just, and I get there's a lot of desperation, but they didn't break in for desperate needs. They broke in because they could, because they thought it would be fun, and they broke in with weapons. You can see it on our CTC cameras, scaling the fence with a big knife, and that's how they cut into our home. So, and I just think, what if one of my children had have woken up? You know, what if and like I said, 4 days later, the Kefu family in Coorparoo, Brisbane, same thing. The mother woke up, she went down, screamed, the dad, the 2 kids, they were all maimed, they were all injured, they were lucky. You know, you look at beautiful Emma Lovell of North Lakes, you know, Boxing Day last year, well, she no longer is here to tell her story. And these are all young, repeat offenders who will continue because there's just no consequences. And I don't have the answers. I wish I did. I'd sing them from the rooftops. But we cannot continue to do nothing because nothing is ineffective. It's madness.
You kind of touched on it there, but just lastly, your family was home at the time when all of this happened. How terrifying is it to look back? These people were armed, they really didn't care about what they were doing. Your family was right in their path to getting what they were doing.
I know, that is the most scariest. Like, the immediate thing is, are your family safe? Is everyone safe? You know, at the end of the day, it's cars. But, you know, once they were fine, but I think it was all the things you learnt afterwards. You know, at the point you're kind of in damage control, everyone's fine, what else has been stolen? It's all the drama that... And it's time consuming, and it's laboursome, and it's, you know, because it's all the insurances, it's very inconvenient. But, you know, I'm thankful that in my situation, in my instance, no one was hurt. But I have seen story after story, and I touched on beautiful Emma Lovell. She is no longer here to tell her story. And that is not acceptable, and that is not something I'll just stand by. And I will help and stand by anyone who can affect change, meaningful change. And I don't know what that looks like, and I don't know what that is, but we cannot continue to do nothing, because nothing is harming innocent people. It is maiming people, it is taking lives, and that's just, we can't do that. And to be the state, this beautiful, we call this state the Sunshine State, to be known as the car theft capital of Australia, that is not a moniker I am comfortable sitting with. So, you know, good luck to anyone who can try and affect change. Here to help in any way if we can.
Thanks, Kim. Thank you. Thanks, Kim. And it takes a lot of courage for someone who's been the victim and now is one of the statistics in the car theft capital of Australia to speak out, Kim. So thank you very much, because I think with people like you speaking about these things and calling for consequences for actions for young offenders, we will get change. We will affect change. So thank you. Thank you. You guys got any questions? And I'm going to hand over to the other guys. Yeah.
Jarrod, we're calling for, judges to be able to more easily be able to lock kids up who do commit these offences. But most of the research shows that kids, if they're locked up, that just continues to perpetuate the cycle of them offending. They come out and reoffend, get locked out, come out and reoffend. But how are you going to stop that when all the experts are saying that's what happens,
Yep.
locking kids up isn't?
Yeah. Well, look, it's a great question. See, what you've got to do is look at it, all of it together, not simply what the state government are doing at the moment and looking at one little thing here and one little thing there, or announcements and PR stunts, because that's what's happened over the last 8 years. The Palaszczuk government have been in for 8 years. The first thing they did when they got elected was to weaken the youth justice laws. They changed all the laws, they brought back detention as a last resort, so they weakened all the youth justice laws. They got rid of breach of bail. And so what we've been fighting for with victims for the last 8 years is the stronger laws, the stronger consequences for actions. Is it any wonder, with fewer police and weaker laws, that Queensland is in a youth crime crisis? Seriously, this government has reduced frontline full-time police officers on the beat. Is it any wonder, when you've got fewer police on the beat, weaker laws, that we have a youth crime crisis? So what we do when we talk about the whole package, we talk about consequences for actions and stronger laws. We talk about unshackling the judiciary, getting rid of detention as a last resort. And here's the key element to your question, is when we talk about the early intervention prevention program. Now, it's clear that the government have not been focusing on the hardcore repeat juvenile offenders. That has gone up from 10% to 17% under this government. And what they're doing is, when they're going into detention centres, you've still got to have the programs in place and the preventative and intervention programs in place. But clearly that has not been happening, because they're coming out and they are reoffending. But there comes a time in our community where we've got to say, look, enough's enough. The repeat juvenile offenders in that 17% cohort, that has increased from 10%, our community will be better protected by those people in a detention centre. Now then, you must, absolutely must, make sure you've got the programs in place so when they do come out of detention centres, they're not reoffending. The current system is not working. And that's why we've been saying to the government, you've got to have a look at all these things in a whole package and not just cherry pick things as they have been doing for media and publicity stunts. Yes.
You kind of touched on it then, but you clearly don't think there's enough frontline police to be tackling this crisis. What's the solution there? What can the government do?
Well, it's clear we don't have enough frontline police on the beat, and what the government does is use weasel words. They talk about announcements and what they call approved police officers. But an approved police officer is a statistic on a number. It is not a man or woman in blue fighting crime. When a victim of crime rings 000, the phone's not being answered by an approved police officer. It's being answered by an actual police officer on the beat. That's what we talk about. The government are saying they've increased police. They haven't. All they've done is increased the announcement, the approved number, but it doesn't mean that they actually have more police on the beat. In some regions in Queensland, they've gone backwards. The Sunshine Coast, for example, has 10 fewer police officers on the beat than it did in 2015. Sunshine Coast has 10 fewer police on the beat than in 2015. But if you ask Police Minister Mark Ryan, he'll say, oh no, we've approved X number of police on the Sunshine Coast. Well, guess what? Just like they make up fake beds in hospitals, they make up fake police in their numbers. An approved police officer is not an actual police officer fighting crime on the beat. It is a number the government say they want to get to, but they haven't, and they now have to advertise internationally to try and get police. The other element is culture in the Queensland Police Service. The culture in the police service, the feedback we're getting, is the worst it's ever been. Police don't feel they have the support of government. They don't have the resources, and they don't have the laws, the effective laws the police want to be able to fight crime effectively. And I just want to give a shout out to all our frontline workers, particularly today is First Responders Day. I want to give a shout out to all our first responders, because they do an amazing job in the most difficult of circumstances with a government that's not properly resourcing it and not giving them the laws they need to properly do their job.
Socio-economic backgrounds, they're bored, they fall into the wrong crowds, that kind of thing. What can be done even before these kids fall into those crowds to stop them, I guess, getting to those places in the first place?
Well, it starts at school, obviously. School principals and teachers will be able to identify children that are going off the tracks, and that's where you've got to start. It's absolutely in school. And when Kim, the victim of crime, spoke just before about how do we get to this in the state, well, there's a few things. Fewer police on the beat fighting crime, weaker laws, a government that's not listening to Queenslanders anymore, not listening to victims of crime, a government that is in constant chaos and crisis. You also talk about the lower socioeconomic areas. We're in a cost of living crisis. It's not helping, because as we're in a cost of living crisis, every time someone gets broken into, their insurance premiums are going up, their costs of living are increased, as I said, their insurance premiums are going up, and they can least afford it. So the government have got to get serious about this, not only listen to the victims of crime, but put in place the laws that the police need to do the job, and put victims first. But also, I think if you ask any Queenslander, do we want to see young kids constantly in and out of detention? No. We want young kids to be held accountable for their actions, but the ones that do want to cut a break and want to change their life and go on a better path, a more positive path, and contribute positively to their communities, absolutely, they need all the support and help they can get. We can't forget them, because that will alleviate a lot of the youth crime issues if those people are given a chance. So we don't want to write kids off. We want to give them a chance. But the reality is there's a 17% cohort of young offenders, repeat young cohort offenders, that have been completely left to their own devices by this Palaszczuk government with the weak laws, and that's why we've got now, it's gone up from 10 to 17%. Now, I'm going to hand over to Pat Weir. We're talking about chaos and crisis in government. It's not only in the youth justice sector, it's also in the energy sector. So Pat Weir, our Shadow Minister for Energy, is going to make a few remarks about that. And then we couldn't be at the wonderful Toowoomba region in FarmFest without hearing from our Shadow Minister for Agriculture, Tony Perrett. So I'm going to hand over to Pat, and then Tony will take the mic. Thank you. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Jarrod. Well, I've lived in this region all my life, and I never believed we would have this region as one of the leading areas for car theft in this state. I would have never believed that we would see our regional towns where police cars are being rammed. This Palaszczuk government is failing regional Queensland. It is not keeping them safe. But that's not the only area where the Palaszczuk government is failing. And I talk about the energy sector, which continues from crisis to crisis under Minister Mick de Brinny. We constantly have heard from Minister de Brinny that power prices will be reduced. We are not seeing that. People are seeing their power bills rolling in now. We saw a 32% in the first increase in the first quarter of this year. There's another 20% increase on its way, and some of those are entering mailboxes now. We have the situation at Jarrod, where we know that the C4 generator will now not be back online until the middle of next year. The Queensland Audit Office and the Queensland Competition Authority have both stated this is part of the reason why our power prices are going up. We still have not seen the Bleijie report. What happened at C4? We do not know the cause of it. That report is months overdue. We need that report to be released publicly and in full. We also do not know what is going to happen with the joint venture with C3 and C4 at Jarrod. The joint venture partner, Genuity, went into a receivership. That was months ago. We still do not know what's going to happen. Is the government going to take over that partnership? Are they going to go out into the private sector and look for a private sector partner? What effect is that having on bringing C4 and C3, which is also offline as you recall, back online? The fact that we are getting delay after delay and no answers about the future partnership with C3 and C4 is very, very concerning, and Queenslanders are paying the price through their power bills.
We've also seen issues, especially over the recent summer, there were issues with the B2 unit as well, operating in the city. Do you think CS Energy are effectively managing Jarrod well, given that one of their units is generating at half capacity, C3's offline, C4's offline. There's been times where other units have been completely offline as well. Yeah.
As you would recall, about 12 months, 18 months ago, we had all 4 generators at Jarrod, or the whole 4. So you cannot look at situations like that and say that the maintenance is being done. We still have 2 off, and that is the problem with the supply in Queensland. If we get another generator in this state fail, we are going to suddenly be staring down the barrel of power shortages. That is the danger for Queensland. We need these generators in action for a long time yet. We talk about the transition to renewable energy, and everybody wants to see affordable, renewable, reliable energy. But these generators are going to play a part in that. They will only play a part if the maintenance is maintained. Well, it's interesting to see that, but the buck stops with Minister de Brinny. This Palaszczuk government has been in power for 8 years, and we have seen power prices increase and our generators become unreliable in that time. The buck stops with Minister de Brinny.
Tony? Right. Thanks, mate. Thanks, Tony. Tony Perrett, Shadow Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. It's good to be here on the Darling Downs again for the 48th Annual Farm Fest Agricultural Field Day, and what a great event it is. We all understand the importance of agriculture to Queensland, but to see it showcased in the form that it is here on the Darling Downs is something that we all need to be proud of. And agriculture just doesn't happen by accident. We need strong government policy that supports agriculture in and around biosecurity, in rural training, investment into water infrastructure, to make certain that the rural Queenslanders that are here have confidence in that investment, and make certain that government puts that at the forefront. We saw through the COVID pandemic, we saw that agriculture was one of the key industries that held up the state economy, and it's important that agricultural people have confidence to invest. And I do have concern in and around rural training. We saw the final nail in the Longreach Pastoral College coffin yesterday. We saw the announcement where the government have sold off that. We saw that with the Emerald Pastoral College in recent times, where they sold off the various assets that were linked to that. And it's important that particularly young people have confidence in a future in agriculture, and that includes the workforce that's needed to work within modern agriculture. Research and development is another important area, ag tech. So we need to make certain that our agricultural training facilities, even though there's very little of those left, and now mostly through TAFE colleges, we need to be certain that they actually meet the requirements of agriculture, and particularly the role that it'll play in keeping the Queensland economy strong.
Thanks, Tony.
All good.
Brandon?
Are you across the ag force announcement this morning that they're talking about the Cohen biosecurity centre closing in June? Did you want to touch on that at all?
Absolutely. That's a shameful decision by the government to do that. There's been very little information in and around that, other than they're going to close it on the 30th of June. We need frontline biosecurity services in Queensland strengthened. And that's absolute. Everything that you see here at this agricultural field day is underpinned by biosecurity in this state, whether that's livestock, whether that's in cropping, horticulture, so many other areas need certainty in and around biosecurity, and to have that frontline biosecurity facility close on some technical issues with no clear pathway for it to be replaced is absolutely shameful. And Minister Ferner needs to make a commitment to keep that facility open, rather than close it and take an easy option not to deal with the issues that are related to that. And AgForce, among many agricultural industry groups, have raised their concern, and it's disappointing that, again, this Palaszczuk government is not committed to biosecurity here in this state.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
$2 billion, that's right.